Welcome to the next episode of the Creating Belonging podcast. Today, my guest is Lauren Glazen, and I want Lauren just to introduce herself. So, Lauren, tell us about you.
Yes. Hi, Justin. And hi, everyone. So I'm Lauren, and what should I tell everyone about myself? I'm Lauren. I am a British person living in New York. And I'm Jewish, and I'm gay, and I'm fun, and I'm blonde, by the way. Important identity that gets overlooked, I think.
Wait, hold on, pause. Are you a real blonde?
That does, these questions I'll answer at a later date. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter for the content of this podcast.
Okay.
I'm blonde, identifying.
It is a part of your identity, absolutely. So Lauren and I worked together several years ago, and maybe just to get us started as a fun way to warm up, in the book, and I think even in the first episode of our podcast, I tell my favorite story about belonging was when I brought my team together in Chicago for a dinner, and then we went to a concert, and Lauren was at said dinner. And so I'm the only one who's been telling the story from kind of all the way along. And because it's been a big part of this work, Lauren, what was your experience with that dinner?
Yeah, I've got behind the scenes information for everyone, about this dinner. So people are about to get the real. No. I remember it sort of exactly how you told it. I mean, obviously I was a participant, and I know that you and I spoke about the dinner like recently, actually. And I said to you, I'm the person that keeps kosher in the story. And, I've been kosher 17 years. And all 17 years, I've gone to so many dinners and those, dinners and events and things. And always, it's so ingrained in me now. Like, I'll have the other option. I'll have the modified option, and that's fine. Not everyone, needs to accommodate every single dietary request. But for you, and even I think I knew you for at least 2 years before that dinner. And every time you would, I don't know if it's just your natural curiosity, but you'd always ask questions about it. You'd always want to know, like, so what does this mean? Why can you not mix milk and meat? Why do you have to like do this or do that? So I think I feel like you're just a generally curious person, but the dinner definitely evolved into us all feeling, like we belong, basically, exactly sort of like you labeled it. And also it's like a different feeling, right? You're going to your boss's house, like you were the director of the group. So, we were invited into your space, into your house, and we were all like side messaging about it, like, what's it going to be like? And and it was really awesome. I think even to this day, and sorry if anyone listening that I've been on a team with since then, like, that was one of the best teams, one of the best environments, one of the most authentic I have ever been. And I still speak to everyone on that team. And events like you inviting us into your house, like, it's just another level of feeling, that team dynamic. So I don't even know if that answered the question. The food was delicious. You did not give us food poisoning. And yeah.
Thank you. So, what's funny, and I think when we talked about it the last time, I sometimes I kind of forget what we served. And it was, I know that we had salmon, right? With pasta and like a tomato sauce. That was the main.
And a salad, I remember.
Yeah. Probably a salad with homemade dressing. So I love a homemade dressing.
Oh, yep.
And then I think we did have cheese, like a cheese entree to start, but it was like, I knew that your rule was like 30 minutes between everything, right?
Mm.
So
yeah, I mean, typically it's 30 minutes between like dairy and meat. So fish was okay.
Yes.
And I definitely remember that. Like, we all, we all sat down, and I don't think there was like meat by the, like, a typical
No,
charcuterie board
no, there was not.
has pork and salami and things like that, and you know, there was like none of that there, so I didn't even have to, you know, bypass the meat on the cheese plate. But I remember, yeah, we sat on your sofas, and you had like a great, I don't think you still live there, but you had like an amazing view of like the water. We were like up high, and we were like sat and hung out and drunk wine, and I'm a massive lightweight, so I was probably wasted by the end of the cheese course. Like one glass of wine and I'm, you know, I'm on the floor. So that hasn't changed, by the way, Justin. I'm still a lightweight.
That's all right. That's okay.
Yeah.
Good. I love bringing someone into the space of creating belonging of who was a part of that story. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And the curiosity thing, I think I have learned the most about the Jewish religion from you than anyone else. So I want to thank you for that.
Yeah. You should label me Rabbi Lauren, you know, on this, because that's, I really like, I think your curiosity, and it's really fun to teach people about it. You know, it's definitely a big part of my identity, and maybe we'll get into that more, you know, as our time goes on together. But it's a massive part of my identity, and it's so fulfilling to talk to people that are just genuinely curious about it. So thank you
Yeah,
for giving me that opportunity.
thanks. Well, let's get into it then. So, looking at the creating belonging model and kind of the different areas of the creating belonging model, as you reflect on different experiences that you've had, different communities that you've been in, either work or, you know, with the church or like anything, you know, actually, do you call it church? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, synagogue.
Synagogue. Oh my
Yeah, I was
gosh.
just going with it.
See,
I wasn't going to
you're right.
correct
You're
you.
right.
I'm nodding
Sorry.
along here, but it's perfect. Yeah, it's all good.
So any experiences that you've had that that you can think of that come to light of like when you've sat in one particular quadrant?
Yeah. Yeah, such an interesting question. And like as I was preparing for this podcast, like really thinking about it, and I think I think I've sat in every quadrant, you know, in all of them, and I've sat in some more than the others, and in different aspects of my life. Like in a corporate environment, I've been in corporate companies for 10, 11 years. And I've also been heavily involved in like creating Jewish experiences, and like, you know, different sort of Jewish organizations in my personal life. And
Mhm.
so each of those buckets brings me into like different quadrants. And I would say largely about being like a gay woman.
Mhm.
And I would say, so when you and I worked together, I think I was a recluse in this model. Not physically, I was out a lot, but in the belonging, you know, in the model here, I was definitely withdrawn from the gay community, and I think
Mhm.
I was overbearing potentially in the Jewish community, because those were like, and they still are like two of my strongest identities,
Mhm.
along with being British and blonde. But I can't forget that one. And so I was not out. I was in the closet when we
Mhm.
first started working together. Although I think I told you, like, I think I told you personally very early on that I was
Yeah,
not entirely straight. Um,
I
but
remember it.
you do?
I absolutely I remember it. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was probably one of my first trips to New York after
Mm.
you had started working on the team.
Yep.
And we went out to the Stonewall Inn
Mm.
and you were like, "Oh, by the way." Totally remember it.
Yep, yep. And that was massive for me. I mean, I think, you know, we sort of played it off, and it was what it was, but
Mhm.
that was a crazy thing for me to do. No one no one at home knew. My parents didn't know. 99% of our colleagues didn't know. And
Mhm.
then there I am, like telling my boss, you know, and I've done a lot of work on opening up and being able to be more vulnerable. You know, those are things I've struggled with a lot just in my personal life. But that was now what, like 8 years ago, like 7, 8 years ago. That was a long time
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, I definitely remember that. So when you and I worked together, I was definitely more of a recluse. I wasn't in the community, at least not out. You know, I was secretly in the community and obviously having a great time, but it's a completely different it's a completely different feeling when you are out in the community and out loud and proud, which
Yeah.
I'm so fortunate to be now. But yeah, I wasn't then. And so that it swings with your identities, right? It's making me question, like, if you're in one part of this model, where are your other identities? Because they don't all sit in the same quadrant at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, you're making me think a little bit about this because I like a lot of the way that I describe it is like we if we look at one distinct community. So for us it would have been the company that we worked in at that point in time. And so in that one community, we can be in one of the quadrants, and we can shift around in those quadrants. But what's interesting is, yeah, when I met you in 2015, I think you were very, and I wouldn't call you overbearing, but very out with you were authentically Jewish. Like that was like a large part of your identity, and you want people to know that. And I really appreciate and respect that. And then you were also minimizing and hiding another part of your identity. And so it's interesting because it makes me wonder, like, when we have an identity that we can be out and proud about, which was your religion, but another identity that we're like hiding and masking, like where does that put us? It's interesting. So, and you're saying that you felt like you were actually in recluse.
Yeah, definitely with my gay identity for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, yeah, I think it really is interesting because for me, being Jewish, being like out and loud about being Jewish is like low stakes. And I don't know if that like translates or like makes sense, but being gay was like much more emotional, much more like deeply, rooted in some shame and some other things going on inside me. And so it was definitely easier to be that, and that's like, some of the personal work that I talk about. So there's a lot of psychology, I think, that goes into this model as well, and how we talk about our identities, and how we just are able to be authentic and belong. It's a lot to do with us and the environment. There's lots of factors.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so I guess where I'm still like thinking about, so like it was really at that point because you were hiding that one part of your identity, like it's really hard for you to be in a place of belonging because you're masking, hiding part of it. So it's an interesting one because you're kind of like floating in like the kind of around the minimizing, overbearing, recluse, like floating in there, but definitely not in belonging because your different identities are in different places. I'm also curious, kind of given some of the narrative around anti-Semitism, and the rise of anti-Semitism. When you say being a kind of, and I guess maybe, I don't know if this sounds weird, like out as a Jewish person, like I'm curious how that, and obviously you live in New York right now, so like that's very different than being Jewish in, I don't know, Missouri, I would assume. But I'm curious kind of your experience or thoughts around that.
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. It's a really important conversation at the moment. And let me give you some background. So I grew up in London, and being Jewish in Europe is not something that you're out and proud about. It's really, anti-Semitism has always been high in Europe for obvious reasons, right? World War II and just some other things very close to Israel, which is, a topic that has lots of nuances as well. And in America, Jewish identity has always been like, this is my personal opinion, how I feel about it. Jewish identity in America, especially, again, I'm in a bubble in New York, I think, and it's almost seen as like overly accepted, like a privilege to be Jewish. And I cannot tell you the difference of mindset that it is to be Jewish in Europe. So I go to synagogue on the holidays. There's no signage anywhere. There's armed guards around every synagogue. I mean, this is the last 34 years that I've been going. There's iron gates. Every single synagogue has massive iron gates. There is, again, no signage. There's police everywhere. And that's for our safety and security in Europe, being Jewish. And then I moved to America 10 years ago now. And I remember my first 3 months in America, I went to an event by Jewish Federation. I was living in Pittsburgh at the time. Great place. Shout out to Pittsburgh. And with the Jewish Federation of Pittsburgh, I got taken to a conference in Dallas. So we're in Texas, we're in Dallas. I'm on a coach with all these other Jewish people. We're going to this conference, and we pull up, and I look out the window, and on the front of the building, massive, I mean, like 70-foot letters, like, welcome, the Jewish Federation of Pittsburgh, like, we're so happy to have you, like, in massive letters it said, well, like, Jewish. And I'm walking into a building, no security anywhere, no nothing, and we're telling everyone that Jews are inside this building. And I turned to my friend and I said, this is like, what, how are we going in there? Like, what? It was literally unheard of for me to like be able to go into a building that promotes being Jewish in America and feel safe. And it was like the best night ever. Of course, it was completely safe. It was just very, very different. So that's just like some of the nuances, even in my identities of being British and Jewish and living both places and having, identities like whirling around everywhere there. So
I didn't realize. So even in London, that was your experience.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And you know me, like,
realize that.
Yeah. I'm obnoxious. I'm loud. I'm annoying, especially earlier Lauren, and younger Lauren, and I would wear massive, Star of Davids. I had Israel stickers on my car, and people, my parents would be like, Lauren, just be careful. Like, you can't park your car in London with these, just we're a little worried here. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, whatever. And now I'm like, I get it. Like, I really get it. So yeah, even in London, definitely it was scary. And so how it feels to me is like America's catching up with the first 24 years of my life, how I had to be, being Jewish. So
wait,
yeah.
but catching up like in
like a bad
okay.
Yeah.
I'm like in a regressive way.
Right. Ugh. In a regressive way where Jews are feeling unsafe, where we are, the attacks are on the rise by, I don't remember the percentage, by hundreds of percentage. And people are just becoming more disengaged. Yeah.
So I know that you're very involved, across, within your synagogue and kind of across the country in different organizations. So I'm curious how you see others shifting how they show up in the world.
You mean Jewishly?
Yeah, Jewishly. Is that is that a word? Jewishly?
Yeah, it is now.
I love it.
I see people shifting a lot, and I see people scared. I also think generationally it's different. Millennials, boomers, Gen Z, there's lots of studies done, and in 50 years from now, what's it going to look like? And I see people showing up in ways where they are still being Jewish, but in sort of a less loud way. So we will meet up for holidays, but in someone's house, or, you know, like in a synagogue. And even synagogues, you know, in Brooklyn, where I live, there's not that many younger people going to synagogue anymore. And we're still really proud. We're still, I would say, culturally very Jewish, but religiously that dial is being turned down in my experience. And like you said, I've been involved in lots of different Jewish organizations, one of which is it's called Moishe House. And
Mm-hmm.
I know you know well, I was
Yeah.
very involved when you and I worked together. And Moishe House, you know, creates Jewish experiences for people where they're at, like, you know, really sort of wants to promote whatever it means for you to be Jewish. That's what you should do. So I would put on different types of events, some Jewish, some not Jewish, but you know, we would all be there, we'd be hanging out, and that would feel Jewish in some ways, but there was oftentimes not much religious affiliation there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that that us Jews do pretty well. We love community. Community is the biggest part of being Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
Socializing, food, drinking. I was explaining what being Jewish meant to some of my friends the other day, and I'm like, basically, we get really drunk, we eat we eat a lot of food. There's one holiday in particular, it's called Purim, and you are commanded to get drunk and to be in a different frame of mind than you are when you're sober, so you can access different thoughts and you can connect in different ways. So we lean hard into those parts of Judaism in my world, and what I can see. We just make it fun.
Your description of your experience
Mm.
I've always been like, maybe I can get into this. Like maybe I should because like I don't know, can I become Jewish?
Absolutely, you can.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't go and recruit people,
Right.
you know, different to some other religions, but
Mm-hmm.
we totally accept it. We could do with a few more. We could do with a few more Jews. So come on
Yeah.
over.
I mean, the way that you describe your experience, I just like I've always appreciated it, and it's different to what I assumed or expected. But I think the one of the things that I love, you know, aside from the partying aspect that you've described, one of the things that I love is just the idea of community and the strength of you know, bringing people together, and you know, even you know, like Shabbat on Friday, like, you know, just shutting everything down and enjoying time with loved ones. That I love that. I think that's incredible. And I think we could all like, we don't need to be Jewish, but I think we need to embrace that principle of,
Yeah.
you know, tuning to the ones that mean the most to us, not tuning to our phones. Um,
Yep.
I want to hear. So, you know, you talked about biggest parts of your identity being Jewish, being gay, and being blonde.
Listen.
So I'm curious, you know, and I think that I'm assuming there's a lot of variations of Judaism, right? Just as there is a lot of variations of and interpretations of Christianity. So
Mm.
I'm curious, in your experience, as you came out with your sexual identity, how that worked in with your religion. And even in particular, thinking about the creating belonging model, what quadrant you know, what experience did you go through in the quadrants within your own synagogue?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. And also, just one point on Shabbat. Thank you for bringing that up. It is the best 25 hours of the week for sure. And it's funny, I was actually reading something about it just quickly, and it said it was like a conversation between two people, and someone said, how on earth am I going to be able to not be on my phone, not be on my computer, not be on my Kindle, not be, because for the Sabbath, for Shabbat, we turn all electricity off.
Mm-hmm.
um and I think it was a rabbi that answered, and he said, this is the time that we need it the most. The more technology we have in our lives, the more we should be disconnecting from it just for a period of time. And I couldn't agree more. I know I go to the sauna a lot. Actually, this is not in my Jewish identity, and I always try and leave my phone outside the sauna, because I'm like, I'm forcing myself for these 30 minutes to be without my phone. And even the 30 minutes, I'm like rushing back to my phone, like we all are. But and so for 25 hours, it seems like so many hours, and it is so necessary, so necessary in this day and age, especially with mental health. And so it all, I think we were onto something 2,000 years ago when we came up with this rule.
I literally this morning, I just finished the book Stolen Focus. And it is written by a fellow Londoner, Lauren. But it is fascinating how technology, and not even just technology, but just our way of life, is destroying our focus, our ability to focus. And so that idea of being able to unplug for a bit and reset is so important. So yes, this is a good side shoot. So go turn off your technology after you're done listening to this podcast.
Yep.
Turn off your
Obviously.
technology.
Yeah. Listen all the way through before you turn off your phone.
Yes.
So, but yeah, to answer your question from before, how is my Jewish identity, my gay identity, and how did it intertwine when coming out?
Hey, Justin here. When I started the Creating Belonging podcast, I set out to create one that I would listen to, and that means episodes shorter than 30 minutes. So far, we've been hitting the mark, but I was enjoying my conversation with Lauren so much that I'm splitting this episode into 2 parts. We'll be releasing a special second part to this episode in 1 week, so check back next week to learn how Lauren reconciled her Jewish and gay identity.